Drachen channel on YouTube. I'm Lois, and today we are going to be talking about some of the behind the scenes writing of my book, A Different Way of Seeing, A Blind Woman's Journey of Living an Ordinary Life in an Extraordinary Way, which is kind of part memoir, kind of part self help, kind of how to live as a blind person. And what I thought I wanted to do today is just to talk you through the chapters of the book. There are 12 of them, and talk through what you'll find in each chapter. And much of the writing of the book I've already described in a different way, in a previous video, the origin story of A Different Way of Seeing. And in that, I mentioned that part of the process of writing was that I'd been asked a whole lot of questions on social media of things that people wanted to learn how I did them. And I gathered them together, and those became the basis for the chapters that I'm going to be telling you about in this video. So let's just dive straight in with, let me just see if I can find where that chapter headings are. Okay. The first chapter, Who, How, and Why. That basically gave the overview of my story of losing my sight, of becoming blind at the age of 21, talking about a little bit about my life beforehand, and then going through what the experience was like for me and for those around me, my friends and my family. So it's probably the most personal of the chapters. There's a lot of stories included, as I said in the previous video. There's a lot of personal stories in there, but there's also a lot in there about how I approached the whole reality of adapting my life, adapting my way of doing things, the people who I reached out to help me, and the support system that I developed through my friends and my family, my incredible friends and my wonderful family. And also a little bit about my philosophies on life, what I believe about what helped me as I approached that monumental task of adapting to this brand new way of being in the world. So that's the first chapter. The second chapter is called Covering the Basics. And this was really a lot of questions that I received that didn't really seem to fit anywhere else. It was some of the basics about things like how I tell time. Do I dream, envision, or not? And it really was an interesting chapter to write, but I I'm not certain that I felt as comfortable with chapter two. It didn't flow for me as naturally as some of the other chapters did. Not that anyone's ever told me that they didn't find that it fits, but for me, it was just one of the few more difficult chapters, and I'll talk a bit about that when I get through and I'll explain why. Okay, so chapter 3, At Home. This was a lot of fun to write. This speaks about stories about how I do simple tasks like cooking, cleaning, housework. And it's a very practical chapter. Although I suppose to say that when you read the story of the way I kind of started cooking and how I myself decided that I would start creating different recipes before I had access to recipes on digital devices. So, as I talk about how I started cooking using the In the Ideal World School of Cooking, which meant that I would sit there and think about the dish that I wanted to cook and go, in the ideal world, how would this be made? And that's how I'd make it. Which led to some rather unexpected results, which you'll see if you do read the book. Okay. Chapter 4 is quite closely linked to chapter 3. It's all about putting myself together. And that's not a mental um, kind of drawing in my energies and my energy reserves and my resilience and things like that. No, this is the far more practical chapter about how do I differentiate my clothing? How do I shop for clothing? How do I apply makeup? And that kind of thing. And some of those I'm really drawing on in some of the other playlists on this YouTube channel so that you can actually see me doing those tasks. And those will be growing depending on when you watch this video. That will be an ongoing playlist as well that you will discover. So you'll learn about how I do things like applying my makeup, differentiating my clothing, and so on and so forth. Okay, chapter 5, bits, bites, and snarls. This was my hardest chapter to write. This is the chapter where I talk about technology, the devices that I use, and some of the challenges that I regularly experience when using technology because I'm not a techie person. So, technology is one of the most fundamentally and most profound tools that I use in my life. Almost everything I do, I use technology. So, being able to navigate my way around the technology that is available to me is kind of important. But as I said, I'm not a techie person. And that's why the bites and the snarls come into it. But bites there is spelled B-Y-T-E-S. And it's it was a hard chapter in trying to really distill what it was about technology that became so difficult for me. And of course, as technology changes, things that were impossible for me at one time then become possible for me a day later or a year later or 2 years later or whatever. So it was also the chapter that changed most when I updated the book shortly after it was released. So for those of you who are interested in technology, who would be curious to find out how a blind person navigates some of the technology that's available, because believe me, there are new products on the market every single day. And for me, technology is something that I find a product that I can use when I need it. I'm not someone who explores new products simply because they are new. So maybe you'll find some resonance in that. Maybe you won't. Okay, let's move on to chapter 6, earning my keep. In this chapter, I talk a lot about the jobs that I've had and how the work that I was doing has shifted very much from what I originally planned before I became blind, right the way through to my employment in mainstream employment. Some of the challenges that many people with disabilities face when looking for full-time employment, and yeah, some of the things that I do now that I've moved beyond the employment space. So I'm now self-employed, working for myself, and I outline some of what I'm doing in those chapters. Although, again, everything is constantly changing, and I'm loving the work that I do. So, chapter 7, ... and in my leisure time. When I became blind, I honestly had no idea about what I was going to be able to do. And this is a chapter where I really kind of talk about the exploration of what was possible for me. Some things I've tried and continued doing, like reading, listening to music, playing music. But some of them they've fallen by the wayside a bit, just because I'm constantly changing and updating the things that I'm doing, trying new things. And we only have 24 hours in a day. So there are only so many things that I can do at any given time. But this is a chapter that really explores a whole range of different things that I have tried. And it's it was a lot of fun to write as well because I had so many good memories and stories of things that I've done and tried. And it reminds me about the need to be curious, to keep exploring what is possible for me, and to carry on developing new hobbies and new interests. Chapter 8, one of my favorite chapters. Super canines leading the way. And as you can imagine, if you know that I'm a guide dog owner, that's what's in this chapter. Stories of my gorgeous, wonderful, beloved guide dogs. For those who don't know, there have been 4 of those beautiful guide dogs. My first guide dog was Layla, and there's a whole section on Layla, her stories about the time she and I worked together, some of her idiosyncrasies as a personality, and some of the things, her strengths, some of the things that maybe she wasn't so good at, some of the things that together she and I weren't good at, and some of the wonderful adventures we had, and some of the mishaps that we encountered. My second dog was a black Labrador crossed with a golden retriever named Eccles. And Eccles was a very different dog from Layla. She was very much kind of the laid back, you know, lying down and chilling on the couch. She was a really gorgeous dog, but she was a lot more laid back than Layla, who was very work focused. So again, it's some of the stories of the adventures that Eccles and I had. Eccles, well, I'll tell you about that now, but you know, she was a superb worker, but where she really showed her skill was in air travel, because Eccles and I were doing a lot of air travel because of the work that I was doing with Toastmasters and the Toastmasters organization in Southern Africa. So we were traveling locally and domestically within Southern Africa. And my trusty guide dog, Eccles, was usually there at my side. And my word, she knew some of those major airports beautifully. She knew exactly where to go. She could take me. I almost didn't need sighted assistance to guide me through the airport because I could trust my Eccles to take me where I needed to go. But at the same time, air travel, as you can imagine, has some rather remarkable stories. And some of those you'll read in the sections about Layla, about Eccles, and about my third beautiful girl, Fiji. And Fiji is the dog whose life story I published in a separate book, Pause for Thought, Seeing the World Through the Eyes of a Guide Dog. But there's still a section about Fiji in a different way of seeing, because she was the dog that I was working with when I completed the book and updated it. And there's so many stories about Fiji. And I think she was the dog who really taught me about independence. She taught me about what was possible for me. And I think that's reflected in a lot of the stories of the work that we did together, the adventures we had. And of course, as with Layla and Eccles, Fiji was very definitely her own personality. And I think that shines through on the page of both her book, Pause for Thought, and in this chapter. And yeah, as you can tell, it's definitely one of my favorites. Chapter 9, Out and About. This is about things like going out to restaurants, going out and doing things, going to explore the world around me, but in my local vicinity, in my local area, my home city. When we move on to travel, we'll do that in a separate chapter. So there's a lot of stories about going to restaurants, going to movies, going to shopping centers, some of the odd encounters that we seem to have being out and about in the world as people with disabilities, and some of the very strange questions that we get asked. So there's a lot of that kind of story in this chapter. I talk a lot about how servers in restaurants, the different ways that they can engage with me, from ignoring me and asking my husband what I want to have for a meal or a drink, to being very quiet when they put my meal or my glass of wine down in front of me so I don't know it's there unless someone tells me, and the accidents that can happen as a result of that. So there's a lot of fun in that chapter as well, and a lot of real experiences that I'm describing. Chapter 10, another one of my favorites. Seeing the world or not. This is a chapter where I dive into the international travel that I've done. It covers everything from air travel, how I navigate that as a blind person. How do I get through the airport? How do I pack? How do I decide where we're going? How do I arrange that, research my destinations? How do I approach travel? And then, of course, when I get there, how do I sightsee? Spoiler alert, I don't. I sight experience. So travel is talking about the way I use my other senses to gain a multidimensional, a multisensory image experience of every destination I go to. Now, one thing you need to know about me is that I do love travel. It's been one of my favorite activities since, gosh, well, let's just say that one of the stories in Different Way of Seeing talks about me at the age of 6 telling my parents with absolute certainty that I wanted to go everywhere in the world and meet everyone in the world. And describing how, even though I know now as an adult that that might not be possible, my blindness is not going to be the thing that will stop me trying. So that's chapter 10, Seeing the World or Not. Chapter 11 is called From the Outside In. And this is a very special chapter to me because it was written by my husband. I have a husband, Craig, who we've now been married. Well, I'm recording this in February 2026. And in 2 months' time, we will have been married 27 years. Oh, my word, I can't believe it's 27. And so if anybody knows me, it's Craig. And I wanted to get a sense from him of what it's like being married to not just a blind person, but blind me. And just to put that in context, I only met Craig after becoming blind. He and I we didn't know each other when I was a sighted person. So he's got very little basis for comparison. But what are the impacts of being married to me like for him? What are the things that he has to think about? The things he has to do differently, perhaps, or different ways that he's had to approach being married to someone who is blind. And it's very special for me from that perspective, because it does give me the ability to look at my life from the outside in. The final chapter in the book is chapter 12, The Last Words. And this was really just a summary of my story so far. It talks about closing the circle that started with the who, how, and why, and looking at the person that I was right back when I first was diagnosed as being blind to the person that I am now. And just reflecting on that journey, reflecting on the growth, the resilience, the changes, the opportunities, the excitement, what I'm looking forward to as I move forwards, knowing that I will continue moving, learning, growing, changing, and experiencing more and more and more. And I think that's kind of where I should leave this. So I'm going to first show you the cover of the book, and then I'm going to let you know where you can find it if you'd like to learn more about some of that content. Let me just find where I've put that book. Wouldn't you know it? It's way out of my reach. I always say that if I can't reach something, then it may as well be on the other end of the world. But let me see if I can find it. Just hang on. I'll be back. There we go. Not so far away. Okay. There is the book, A Different Way of Seeing by Lois Strachan, and it's a blind woman's journey of living an ordinary life in an extraordinary way. Just to explain that subtitle, one of the terms that people euphemistically refer to blindness as is being able to be having different abilities. Someone's not disabled, they have different abilities. I disagree with that myself. I'm happy that people who use that term and are comfortable with it should use it. But here's why I prefer not to. I believe that my abilities are exactly the same as anyone else's. The only thing that is different are the tools and techniques that I use to accomplish tasks. And that is ultimately what I'm explaining and exploring in A Different Way of Seeing. I'm exploring the tools and the techniques that I use to live an ordinary life in a way that is perhaps a little beyond the ordinary. If you would like to read the book, it is available on my website, loisstrachan.com, and that's LOISSTRACHAN.com. It's available on Amazon as an ebook and as a print book, and it's available on Audible as an audiobook. I don't think it's available on Audible as anything else. I don't think it would be, could be, should be, but there we go. It's available as an audiobook on Audible. Thank you so much for joining me on this video as we walked through the chapters and the content of A Different Way of Seeing. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about what you'd find in the book. If you enjoyed this video and would like to find out more, please just check out some of the other videos on the Lois Strachan YouTube channel, and you'll find all sorts of content, not just about my writing, about my speaking, and a lot about how I live as a blind woman in a sighted world. There's lots of fun short videos on there, and there's a lot of content. And if you have questions, please drop them in the comments. I always love receiving questions from people, and you never know, that could spark off a video to answer your question. If you like this video or any of the others, please like them or share them, because that's how I know that my content, what I'm sharing, can reach new viewers. And I always love growing the community. And on that point, if you did enjoy this, if you want to watch more, why not subscribe? Become part of the family. We'd love to have you here joining us. Okay, that's it from me for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope we will see you next time. Bye for now.